Okay, welcome back. So today we are going to be doing arc length. And arc length, all arc length is if I knew the radius, I could find the circumference, right? Because circumference is 2 pi times the radius. So if I want to find just part of the circumference, like that part right there, what I'm going to do is figure out what the whole circumference is and then multiply it by what part of the circle I have. And the way we can figure out what part of the circle I have is by using the central angle measure. Because remember, if this is 107, then this would be 107. So that's 107 degrees out of the whole circle, which is 360 degrees. So I find the circumference and then I multiply it by that portion of the circle or that ratio. So it's whatever x, the degree measure of the arc, times 360, and then I'm going to multiply that whole thing by the circumference. An easier way to do that in the calculator, because it's going to still remain equal, is x times the circumference divided by 360. So that's the easier way to do it. These two things mean the exact same. So let's take a look. Let's do some sample, and then you guys are going to do 1 through 4 and put that in the quiz that's going to be online. So I need a circle. I'm going to need the radius, and I'm also going to need to know what part of that I'm going to be using. So let's say that this is 100 degrees. Let's say that my radius here is 4. So remember, I'm going to need the circumference, and I'm going to need to know what x is going to be the degree measure of the circle. If that's 100 because it's a central angle, this would be 100 because it's also the central angle. So first I need to find the circumference, which is 2 times pi times the radius. And then I need to know what this is, what part of the circle that I have. Or this is the central angle, right? The degree right here. So x here is going to be 100. And the circumference here is going to be 2 pi times the radius, which is 4. So now I'm going to take those two things, I'm going to put the x times the circumference and divide it by 360. Nothing hard about that, because I know what x is and I know what the circumference is because I had the radius. So in my calculator I'm going to put x, well that's what part of the circle I'm finding, divided by 360. And I'm going to multiply that by 2 pi times 4. So I'm going to put that all in my calculator. And I don't need those parentheses really, because multiplication is commutative. I can multiply in any order. Now, if you don't have a calculator like this, first figure out what the numerator is, push enter, get a number, and then divide by 360. So I do have our calculator. So let's take a look here. N over D button. I'm putting all of this in my calculator. 100 times 2 times pi times 4. And I'm going to put it all over 360. When I do that, I'm going to get 20 pi over 9. I'm going to push my double arrow button. So 20 pi over 9, let's see this. This is the arc length. Equals 20 pi over 9. And that number is very close to 6.98. So let's take another one. Let's do another one, because you're going to see how easy this is. got a circle. Let's say this time they don't give me the radius, but they give me the denominator, or the diameter. And the diameter, remember, I'm just going to cut it in half. Because the diameter, let's say that this is 30. Okay? So I'm given this circle. They tell me the diameter here is 10. I want the radius, so the radius is half of 10, because this would be 5 and this would be 5, right? And 5 is 10. So my radius is 5. My x, or my arc length here, is 30. My central angle is 30, so I know that little arc length is also 30. So all I need is r and x. And then I'm going to put it in this. X times c over 360. Remember, c is the circumference, x is the measure of the arc. So, circumference equals 2 pi r. You have to keep that in mind. Every time you start with the 2 pi r, I need the circumference and I need the arc length. So I have 30, that's my x, times 2 pi 5, because that's my r, that whole thing divided by 360. That's all you need to do. So let's take a look here. N over D button. I'm going to show you how to do it if you don't have a calculator like this. 30 times 2 times pi times 5 all over 360, because that's a whole circle, right? And I get the arc length here equals 5 pi over 6. And if I push my double arrow button, I get a number very close to 2.61. Well, 2.617. If I was rounding to this number, it would be 2.6. If I was rounding to the nearest tenth. So let me just do another one, because you know, what can they do to like make it a little bit trickier for you? Well, one thing is they could give you the diameter and have you cut it in half. Another thing that they might do is they might give you the radius, but they're not gonna, if they want you to find this part right here, because you'll see on the worksheet it's highlighted, it's darker, the part they want you to find. So let's say they told me this was 45 degrees, but I need to find this part. Well, so then what I would have to do first before I get started is I'd have to figure out, well, how much of the circle is this? Well, the whole circle is 360, right? And I just have to subtract the 45. So what's left? 315 degrees. So this part right here would be 315 degrees. So now, the arc length times the circumference divided by 360, right? Or the central angle times the circumference divided by 360. So this x is easy to find. X is 315. The radius here is 2. So the circumference is going to be 2 pi r. So I have my circumference. I have my central angle, arc length, whatever, or the degree of the arc. So let's start here. I need the x, so 315, times the circumference, times 2 pi, times, whoops, I put 2 pi r, I meant 2 pi 2, because that's how I find circumference is equal to 2 pi r. That whole thing divided by 360. So let me put my calculator here. So for this one I'm showing you, they gave you what you don't need. You got to figure out the part of the degree measure that you do need. So let's take a look here. N over D button. 315 times 2 times pi times 2. That whole thing over 360. Enter. I get 7 pi. All over 2. When I push the double arrow button, I'm going to get 10.99. If I was rounding, I would call that 11, but I'm just going to leave it as 10.99 right now. So that would be my arc length. It's just saying what, how much is this part of the pizza crust. If I was trying to figure out the length of this pizza crust, well, it would be 10.99 centimeters or whatever they're working in. Let me do one more with you. So here's my circle. Here's my radius. Here's my degree measure. So I'm going to say this is 50. So that means this is 50, right? And I'm going to say that this right here, the radius, is 7. So I'm going to need XC divided by 360, where X is my arc length, or central angle, not my arc length, my degree of my arc. It's 50. The circumference is equal to 2 pi r. So the circumference is 2 pi 7. Now I'm going to put that whole thing into this formula. X is 50 times circumference is 2 pi r. So 2 pi times 7 all over 360. So let's pretend now that I don't have a calculator like this. First thing I would do would be getting my numerator. 50 times 2 times pi times 7. Enter. And I got 700 pi for the numerator. And then that whole thing, you would want to divide that whole thing by 360. And you're going to get 6.1. So the arc length, or L we'll call it, is 6.1. So let me do it, if you do have this kind of calculator. And over D button, let's just make sure we get the same thing. We got 50 in the numerator times 2 times pi times 7. That whole thing over 360. When I push enter, I get 35 pi divided by 18. When I push the double arrow button, I get 6.1. So we would get the exact same thing. So that's what you're going to do today. On the worksheet that you can either download or just write down on a piece of paper. You don't have to print it if you don't have a printer. If your printer's not working, it's no big deal. You're going to find the arc length for 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's take a look at this before we start, because I'm going to help you out. For this right here, look what I got. I got the radius is 6, and I have that is the degree measure, right? For this one, they want you to find this little part right here. You got your radius, you got your degree measure. For this one right here, well, look at this is the part that's darker. So that's kind of like this one on the sheet. When I did the video, when I said they gave you this, but they want you to find that. So how are you going to find that? Well, you're going to take 142. So you'll start with the whole circle is 360, and you're going to subtract 142 to get this measurement right here. That's going to be your X, or your degree measure of the arc. And same thing for this one. They gave you what you don't need, and you need this part. So you're going to start, well, this whole section here is 288 degrees, so you're going to take 360, subtract 288, and when you do that, that'll give you this little piece right here. There's your radius. There's your radius. So you guys are going to find the arc length, and you're going to put your answers into Schoology. Well, I hope you have a great day. Hope you enjoyed your weekend, and I will talk to you again on Wednesday. Don't forget to please, please, please submit your work.